In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. All the earth was without form, and the Spirit of God moved upon the heaven and upon the earth. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God divided the light from the darkness. And God called light day, and the darkness he called night. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and saw that it was good. God said, "Let there be grasses," and by his command the earth flourished abundantly. God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures after his kind." And so it was God's word. And the earth became abundant with beasts and creatures of the dense and hidden places on the earth. And his wildlife crept about. By his command there was balance among his creatures, and it was good. God said, "Behold, I have given you dominion over the herbs of this earth, and of the fruits borne by the trees. And I give you dominion over the beasts of the earth, and of the fowl of the air." God saw all that he had created, and it was good. Among God's creation was the whitetail. It was a creation that would survive for more than 2,000 years. The whitetail would be a creation of survival and of adaptability. Today, the whitetail flourishes in almost every part of the United States, Mexico, and Canada. The whitetail species has survived eons of drought, disease, famine, and the ever-present predators. Yet today, its population is greater than ever before in history. Come with us now and spend a year with the whitetail. Life begins for the whitetail in the spring of the year. This young buck was born only 5 minutes before the camera caught this extraordinary event of the beginning of life itself for the whitetail.
The little newborn fawn knows that he's supposed to feed. It's his first time, so he's not really sure just how this is done, or just exactly where his first meal will come from. Whitetail are naturally born to be curious animals, and they do learn so very quickly. This young buck will face many encounters with danger and death as he investigates this new world. Newborns are blessed with an odorless smell, and by lying very still and hidden, he may go undetected by the searching nose of his worst enemy, the coyote. Day by day, if he survives, he will become stronger and wiser in the ways of whitetail survival, and within the next few days he will conquer this new thing called walking, and then he must learn to run, an escape tactic necessary to survive in this new world. Within about 2 months or so, the young buck begins to lose his spotted coat of natural camouflage. And by now, he's begun to learn the smells and sounds and sights of danger. Even as a youngster, the little buck has begun to understand his role in this complex pecking order of this whitetail community. Mother Nature dictates that about half of all offsprings will be does, and half will be bucks. 'Bucks' 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 As with older bucks, this little one has begun to grow his first set of antlers in May. At first, there are only small fuzzy knobs protruding from his head. If times have been tough nutritionally, he might grow only spikes or at best fork horns.
The growing of velvet is a true phenomenon in the world of Mother Nature's scheme. Only now have biologists begun to understand just what triggers this amazing event. Biologists have determined that the growth rate of antler cells is exceeded only by the growth rate of the cancer cell.
Antlers are actually an outgrowth of the deer skeletal system, and they're composed mostly of calcium and phosphorus and other minerals. They have a core much the same as our human bones do. During the entire velvet growth period, which is about 90 days from start to finish, bucks are very protective of their antlers, and they're careful not to bump or rub them against anything that's real hard. Just under the surface of the velvet is a network of blood vessels, which are tender and will bleed easily if damaged.
Let's go now with Jerry and see just how all these bucks got started back in April.
I was very, very fortunate this particular season of 1987 to have located this group of deer only 45 minutes from my home in San Antonio. My plans were to photograph this group of bucks about every 2 weeks, starting with this sequence in late April. As you can see, the bucks have just begun to grow their antlers for the year. As you watch along with me, you'll see that some bucks seem to be further along in antler growth than the others do. Basically because of their age. This buck's grown only about a half an inch. As time progressed, I began to notice that each and every deer, both does and bucks, had a little different personality. Some were real complacent and would just browse about, and some were real skittish and very nervous. Appropriately, this old buck's name was Roman Nose. He probably ran into the side of a car or truck one night out on the highway. Somehow, by God's good graces, I was able to find him most every time within a few hundred yards of where I'd found him the last time. It was early May now, and just look at how much his antlers have grown in only 2 weeks. They've grown into the beginning of forks in just that much time. His old brow tines have grown out to 4 or 5 inches already. You can tell by his actions and how the other bucks treat him that he was once the head honcho of this whitetail group. By May, most of the does look like they're ready to drop their fawns at any time. I called this old buck Ancho. For some reason, he seemed to hang pretty close to old Roman Nose most of the time. Maybe Roman Nose was his brother or might be his father. Sure enough, a few weeks later, I found old Roman Nose again in the same place and almost the same time of day. May is a glorious time of the year when you're out there. It's a time of new life in nature. Fawns are being born, antlers are being grown, and wildflowers are blooming, and the smell of sweetness is just everywhere. All the bucks seem to want to get together all in the same spot, kind of like a bachelor's party that's going to go on for weeks. Old Roman Nose always acted like he was some sort of a sentinel. He always seemed to sort of skirt the rest of the deer and keep a watchful eye out for danger. By the later part of June, Roman Nose and the rest of the bucks were really starting to grow some antlers. This buck was growing points out of everywhere. Roman Nose was too. Just look at the sticker points coming off the back of his left burr and the kickers coming off his primary tines. One, two, three, four, five, six bucks, all standing on about 12 square yards of land. How'd you like to lease that place? Here comes old Roman Nose and his partner, Ancho. Notice how the younger bucks kind of stare old Roman Nose off and out of the way? That's the way things are in the world of the whitetail. When a herd sire gets too old, there's always some younger and stronger buck that's going to take his place. Maybe like this old boy right here. Judging by the grayness in his face and his body condition, old Roman Nose must have been 7-8 years old in 1987. But even at that, he was growing one heck of a set of antlers. By mid-July, his primary tines looked like they were 12 or 13 inches high, and his kicker points were getting longer and longer and longer. Look at this guy. Look at that drop tine and all those non-typical points. He's got 13 or 14 points. And look at Ancho. He's probably 22 inches wide already. And look at this buck. Look at the length of those beams and how high and even all his points are. I named this old buck Stickers. He was a shy one. Always stayed to himself. He was always the last one to show up. And as the evening would approach, he was always the last one to leave the herd and quietly slip away and disappear into the heavy brush.
It was late August when Jerry returned to see how all the bucks would look now that they were in hard antler. White-tailed bucks are capable of breeding just as soon as they are in hard antler. And in the post-oak country of Texas, it's not uncommon for does to be bred as early as August.
Old Stickers had already broken off his left brow tine as well as that pretty drop tine. It's pretty obvious to me that these bucks were already trying to breed. You could tell by the way they were sniffing and nosing around that a few does were coming in. At first, only a small percentage of the does come in heat. That's because they were born earlier than most other does. All the old bucks were prowling around, just waiting to pick up the first smell of a doe nearing her heat cycle. As their hormone levels rose, each buck was becoming more and more irritable. But something was wrong this day. Stickers was there, and so was that old long bean buck. And he'd become really aggressive all along. Ancho was there, but where was Roman Nose? About this same time of year, and in the Cedar Break country northwest of San Antonio, young Trey Halliburton was just fooling around with the home video camera when he caught this shot of the largest buck I've ever seen in the hill country. You know the funniest thing? I never saw this buck again once the rifle season opened. Who said you can't find big bucks in the hill country?
It's late October now, and Jerry has moved with his camera to the Post Oak country of central Texas. It's in this area that rutting activity begins first in the state of Texas.
It was overcast this day as the first cool front slipped across the state. All the bucks were fidgety and acting anxious and about half dizzy. In October, they're just wandering around, waiting for the first doe to trigger the rut. They're running their trap line, so to speak, checking their scrapes, seeing if there's any does that's come by that are receptive. By mouthing those limbs, the buck leaves his calling card of scent, and numerous scrapes are being made to lay down a perimeter of his territory. This father and son are not really fighting yet. They're only trying to test each other to determine who will rule during this year's rutting frenzy. But it wouldn't be uncommon for these close relatives to try to kill one another over some receptive doe. For in nature, the strongest and wisest of the whitetail always prevails to perpetuate the best genetics for the herd's well-being.
It's late October now, and the situation is quite different among the bucks of South Texas. The days are usually hot and long, and deer aren't moving much. The entire herd on any ranch will tend to stay close to water and move mostly at night.
I've always had pretty good luck finding deer around water tanks. The best time is when it's real hot in October or November. If you'll check out the heavy brush that surrounds a water tank, you can find where they've been laying up. You always find plenty of deer pellets, and that's a sure sign that deer are feeding in the area. Anybody can find a well-traveled deer trail near a tank and build a little brush blind. Best to build it downwind from it about 50 yards. Bow hunters do this all the time. If you do this and stay real still, you're going to see some bucks, and you're going to see them real close. This old buck came to water at high noon, and it must have been nearly 90 degrees that day. The real trick is patience. You've got to get into the area before the sun comes up, and you got to stay all day.
By mid-December, cool fronts become northers, and cold temperatures encourage more daytime movement among whitetail. By mid-December, the rut in the central and northern portions of Texas will be all but over. Not so in South Texas.
At this time of year, rutting activity is approaching a peak. The major part of the doe population will be coming into their first heat cycle, and scrapes and fights among bucks are common. The body posture of the buck segment of the herd is different now. They're irritated, they got their ears flared back, and that's a sure sign that a fight to the death could break out at any time. Very black hock pads are also a further sign that the peak of the rut is approaching. Just prior to the peak of the rut, most does are not receptive and are constantly pestered and chased by the bucks before it's time for them to breed. These two does have temporarily evaded the bucks, but they're leery at this time of year and really don't want anything to do with the bucks. As far as game biologists can figure out, the shortening hours of daylight cause the does to start producing a hormone called pheromone. This scent, which constitutes only a minute part of the doe's urine, lets the buck know that she's almost but not quite ready. It basically means, follow me. As you can see, this buck is staying right behind his chosen mate, but not wanting to scare off or thereby let another buck breeder. He's not being too aggressive. He's pretty much trying to play his cards right. Minute by minute and hour by hour, he will continue his pursuit of her until she's receptive. When she finally comes into full estrus, there'll only be about a 24 to 26 hour period when the buck's sperm will, so to speak, take. Whitetail does may be bred by one or more bucks, and thereby they're termed as polygamous. If conception is not completed after this estrus period, it will repeat itself in about 26 to 36 days. Doe will have a maximum of 3 heat cycles, and rarely any more than that. In any deer herd, the majority of does will peak within about the same 10-day period of time, and this constitutes what we call the peak of the rut. Once conceived, fawns will be born approximately 200 days after the actual breeding took place. Normally, a doe giving birth in her first year will have a single offspring, and after she's 2 years old and older, twins are not uncommon, and triplets are not unheard of. It's common for a yearling, even until it's 18 months old, to want to stay with its mother. But as her heat cycle nears, she instinctively forces her offspring away. Confused, the yearling leaves, not understanding what he's done wrong. It's at a location just like this that the rutting activity begins. A A buck scrape is almost always found under an overhanging limb. It's at a place like this that the doe leaves her urine to tip off the buck that she's near her estrous cycle. When you find a scrape, look around. You usually find rubs, which are locations where bucks have rubbed their antlers or just a would-be opponent to shadowbox with. When bucks make a scrape, they paw out the ground in a circle about 18 inches wide. They then leave their urine, which serves as a personal calling card of their personal identification. Deer use their sense of smell to distinguish one from another. Bucks may further mark their territory by mouthing the limbs above the scrape. Each buck's saliva is easily identified among the deer community. A buck will further mark his territory by leaving a scent released by glands that are located in the fold just in front of his eyes called preorbital glands. Watch what happens when this doe on the left leaves her urine. The watchful buck anxiously approached to test the smell to see if she has released any pheromones. If she has, he will aggressively pursue her.
Scrape after scrape, the buck will check their trap line to see if any receptive does have passed by. It's also common to make new rubs nearby. It is now the 20th of December, and Jerry has gotten a tip from a fellow hunter about sighting a huge buck at a particular location.
The ranch that I was on was an unhunted one, so all the deer were relatively unskittish. The first thing I saw was these two old does. They'd come out into this little meadow, and they began to act very peculiar after I was there for just a little while. First one noticed something. She was really staring back in the brush. Is this the buck I'd been waiting for? I don't think so. He's a good buck, 11 points. Got 6 on this side. He's young though. I'd be willing to bet you this deer is probably no more than 3.5 years old. But he's got a heck of a set of horns for a 3.5-year-old. A few years, he's gonna be a good one. Old bucks always look better going away. Here's another buck. Look at this guy, 10 points. He's a young deer too. Wonder why the big one I've been hearing about hasn't showed up yet. Following that old doe off into the brush. That gum may look good going away like that. Here he is. This is the one I've been waiting for. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. The deer's got 13 points or so. Been a while since I seen a buck this good. Right after those does. Lordy's eye. Look at those forks. Double mule deer on both sides. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on this side. Got those ears cocked back so you can hear what's behind him. He's really checking the situation out. I've always noticed that older bucks like this one are extremely nervous. They just always seem to be on edge. They check everything out before they move out into any openings. Some other bucks are prowling around this same area, and that's what he keeps being so nervous about, I believe. He's got him a couple of does cornered he's been following around, and I think they're afraid to, but they're trying to move in on him. It's probably a 5.5-year-old deer. He keeps growing like he's growing another year. This old deer might buck. Might come real close now. When he looks at me, I think he hears my camera. I'm beginning to believe this guy's a show-off. Just starting to grow that upright point down at the end of his beam on his left. Looked like he tried to grow it on this side this year too. Well, looks like he's had enough of this. He just wandered on off, never saw him again. Many times an older buck will have a son that will act sort of as a sentinel. And I think that's probably what we just saw. The older buck sent 2 young ones out to kind of make sure the coast was clear. Watch how this old buck, he waited till that other buck got out there before he come on out. I think when they get older, their reactions are a little less, their hearing's a little bad, and they'll do this a lot of times. I've had old timers tell me this many times, that they'll use a younger deer as a sentinel. I sit there for the rest of that day, and gradually the sun went down in the west. It had been a good day for me. Thanks to the good Lord and a tip from a friend, I had seen my best buck of the season. It was really foggy this morning. Cold, overcast, and damp. And boy, that old sun looked pretty coming up. There are always some of the prettiest sunrises when you're out there in the woods. Some of the prettiest sundowns you'll ever see in your life. As the fog began to lift and it was light enough to shoot, this old buck wandered up with a little one, and there was a few does in the foreground that they were coming to kind of check out, see if any of them were ready to come in, see if it was time to get after them. They just prowl around. This time of the year it's dry. Most of the plants have died off from the freezes and frost, and food's not quite as plentiful, so they really have to get out and move a lot to make ends meet. That little one, he a little bit afraid of that big boy there. A lot of times hunters wonder why they see cactus that's been nipped off, look like it's been eaten on, wonder if it's cattle or javelinas or deer. Well, probably all three. Cactus at this time of year is a real big part of a deer's diet. They have to have it. It's got a lot of water in it for one thing, and they need the fiber that's in it, and it does contain just a little bit of protein, and they need this. As the season goes along and more does come into heat, the reaction of these deer is totally changed. The posture of their body and so forth, you can see a definite difference. Two old bucks get up against each other, one of them after a doe. Little ears turned back. They walk real stiff-legged, act like they're dizzy. They get after them does and just stay right with them. This little guy here, he's just not going to give up. Put that old head down, look like a dash hound. She's not ready. See how that old buck lays his ears back? I mean, no fool with him. They just get out and wander, trying to pick up a trail. It's at this time of year they're totally irritated with one another. This little guy here, he's just not real sure. That guy was probably his friend a month ago. It's rutting season now, and all the bucks are on edge. I was walking to my hunting stand when I took this footage. I couldn't even get to where I was going, and these deer walked out in the road, and I just laid flat down on my belly. Took this footage just laying flat on my belly. Those deer acted like they never even saw me. These kids get out of the way when Big Boy walks up. Shoot, there were 6 bucks in that road that day. 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. This old boy here had a big old body on him. He prowled around there all morning, pestering this one old doe. Watch him stomp his feet. Javelinas were out. They fighting too. Seems like when game's moving, it's all moving. Javelinas are out, deer are out, birds are out, turkeys are out. Everything's active. Old boy's gonna check his scrape, replenish his scent on those limbs, replenish his urine on the scrape itself. Bucks have 15, 20 scrapes sometimes. They just put them out in a perimeter. Get through with one, they just walk on to the next one. Hoping the doe's come by and left a little scent, indicates she's ready. I call this little buck here Skyrocket. His whole horns look just like skyrockets. For a young deer, he got a real good set of horns on him. Now, he's got love on his mind, you can tell. Got that old tail up. And he's just a-looking. Probably 3.5 years old at most. Might only be 2.5. How slender and doe-like his body is. Little guys, they start fighting probably before the older guys do. They're kind of tuning up and learning from the older ones. They're not trying to hurt each other, they're just pushing. Notice the little one, he always runned off. Here's an old mature buck, probably might even be 6.5 years old, judging by all the little knobs and gnarly protrusions he's got coming off his burr. He was acting just loony as a fruitcake. I couldn't have been over 25 yards from him. He saw me, didn't care. Trying to catch my wind, I was using the skunk scent. He couldn't figure out what was going on. I just sat there real still. If you sit real still, a buck can see you, and many times he won't be alarmed. On this particular day, there was a certain uneasiness among the bucks. Most of them seemed really mad and irritated. I could sense an explosive attitude among the herd. Something was wrong. Then every deer in the pasture had their attention focused on something. Something was about to happen. You could feel it. There was tension in the air. All these bucks could have had their attention on an event that was happening just like this. The 16mm film footage you're seeing was taken nearly 25 years ago, and it's the only footage I'm aware of showing two mature bucks that are totally locked together that fight until their death. Billy Ray Light is the wife of a rancher named George Light, and she was at their home in Cotulla, Texas, when she got a phone call from a ranch hand. He told of two bucks that were locked together back in the root plowed area of the ranch. It was a 25-mile drive for Billy Ray, but she got there in time to record this extremely unusual event. Judging by the rundown condition and hides that were torn to pieces, her husband George estimated that they'd been locked up for probably over 12 hours. One of the most unusual things about this footage is that it was taken in early March. They push and turn, and grind and just try their best to get away from one another, but they can't do it. When they're locked up, they're locked. And they usually die that way. Many times, carcasses are found of the bucks, and the coyotes have just ate them right down to the bone. I've seen photographs of one or two instances that one buck survived, and the coyotes ate only the other one, and he just drug a dead skeleton around with him. Look at these bucks fight. If you'll notice, that one on the right has got a drop tine about 4 or 5 inches long on his right side. Events like this one are not uncommon in the world of the whitetail. It's just another danger, another hazard that sometimes can end the life of a deer. That's the way it goes in nature. This old boy here is a little luckier. He ended up with just a scar on his neck. And this one, he looks like old Tyson might have worked him over real good. A lot of times deer get an eye poked out. Sometimes they get by with just a big old scrape on them like this one's got on his hip. As the season comes to a close, doe by doe is bred. And they're evasive of the bucks. The old bucks, they don't want to give up. They just keep looking, checking those scrapes, walking around all stiff-legged. As it all ends up in January and February, the old bucks just lay around. They're tired. Usually hang pretty close to water. They're frustrated. They don't want it to be over. See them out in the middle of the day sometimes, just straying and looking, sniffing around. I'd seen a lot this year. I'd seen the bucks in the hill country, bucks in South Texas. I was really thankful to have the opportunity to be on the places that I was allowed to go and take my footage. But it finally just winds on down for the deer and for me. The last evening of my last hunt, the old sun was going down on me. And I just sit there enjoying what was going on around me. I hadn't seen any book deer that year. Saw several that were real close to being book deer. Thought maybe this last evening, maybe one would walk out just right at the last. But I'd seen it all. I'd seen the deer shed their antlers and grow new ones, and was lucky enough to catch it every 2 weeks all the way through and see how they branched out, how they went into hard antler, how they started real gradually chasing the does, Got to know a lot of deer like old long beams here. It was almost like I knew him personal. An old big boy. He was something. I guess that was the best buck I saw the whole year. Saw the old does, how they acted as the season went along and how their actions changed. And old Chacho. Found this buck down on the Laguna Seco down in the valley. Watched many a buck make scrapes. Lots of things that people never see. But it was all coming to an end now, and it'd be another year before I'd have the opportunity to get out there again with the camera. And I'd learned a lot too about doing these videos, and saw how old bucks end up dying sometime. How some of them survive. They're an amazing creature. And old Roman knows what happened to him. We found him in March. He had passed on just like a lot of old deer do. He was gone. I'll never forget old Roman Nose. I really got to know that deer. And I'll never forget the 1987 season and spending a year in the life of the whitetail.